Welcome to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast, a show for women entrepreneurs who want to build, grow, and lead successful businesses and high-performing teams. I'm your host, Lindsay White, leadership coach and people strategy expert, here to bring you unplugged conversations with a variety of amazing guests who share expert advice and real actionable people strategies for your growing business. Ready to get unplugged? Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I have with me today one of my absolute favorites, my friend Lindsay Smith. Yes, my friends, it is another Lindsay. There is a gaggle of us. We have a ton of fun. Actually, it's the most remarkable thing when you actually meet another Lindsay. It's like an instant connection. I haven't met a Lindsay I didn't like.
That's fair. And we're AY too, because I
Yes,
feel like the AYs and the EYs, it's like,
it's a
you
thing.
know, it's a thing. Yeah.
It's a thing. I love my EY friends, but let's be honest. AY is
Yeah.
the way to spell it.
Yeah.
My friend Lindsay Smith, what it really is a journalist at heart and got a job at CBC Radio. That's our national, our national broadcaster here in Canada. And even then, she really wanted, to do something different. But with this background in journalism, kind of seemed like the right thing to do, I suppose. A few years later, after doing some freelance blogging, she really fell into this space in the advertising world. And now she does the most amazing things in terms of copy, other digital projects, all of these social media management pieces, and really creates incredible content and helps those of us that are female founders do it in a way that is easy and authentic and approachable and actually gets results. So, Linz, thank you. I'm so glad to have you as a guest today. I know this is going to be an outrageous conversation.
Yes. Thanks for having me, other Linz.
I'm so glad to have you. Yeah, tell us. I mean, I knew your background was in journalism. I knew you'd worked at the CBC. Tell us
Mhm.
about how you came to be a female founder.
Yes. So, yeah, you kind of summed it up perfectly. I did start off my career in journalism. I do have a degree in journalism. And right out of journalism school, all of my journalism teachers were like ex-CBCers. So I was just kind of like, okay, I guess that's what I do now. So I got a job right away at CBC Prince Edward Island in Charlottetown.
So fun.
Yeah, I did my journalism degree in Halifax, so it was just over the bridge. And even then, like my producers were always like, Lindsay, you have to do more news. You have to do more news. But I was like, no, I want to go interview the lady that built her house out of garbage, and get like 3 hours of tape. And to me, the news, it was very formulaic. It was like, okay, this person said this person that said this, and here's the future of the blah, blah, blah. So even then, all of the creative, more current affairs stuff was what attracted me. And then, yes, I did accidentally fall into advertising. It was kind of a fluke. And I stayed there for like 12, 13 years and worked as a copywriter. So what we did there, also very creative. Like
Yeah,
traditionally, an advertiser, it's a copywriter and an art director, and you
right.
work together. So you get a brief and you're like, okay, let's come up with a bunch of ideas for ads. So, you know, it, the cliche about advertising is that, yeah, you sit around with your feet up on your desk. That's true cliche. It's true. So even then, right, everything was creativity first.
Right.
And then, you kind of fit the strategy in later. So then, yeah, and then, I'm originally from Montreal. I met a fella from Hamilton and moved here. And I think, the founder thing, it kind of came, as you know, when you have children.
Yeah.
Here in Canada, the price of daycare is very pricey.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of born of necessity. When I went off with my first baby, and it was kind of advertising is a very transitory industry. So a lot of people move after like 2 years or whatever. And they will like move overseas or go to the US or, go to another agency. And so a lot of my former colleagues would get in touch with me. They're like, oh, we need a copywriter for this pitch. We need a copywriter for this project. And I just was like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You transfer me this money dollars. Like I didn't have a website. It was not official. I had a new baby. Like I was just kind of taking on projects. And then, um, I was very good at the digital projects. Like I was very good at web copy. I was very good. Back in the day, there were banner ads.
Yeah.
I don't even think those exist anymore. Do they?
I
Like
don't think so.
I know. I know. I'm aging myself now. So I was very good at creating content for other people. So I also did that on a freelance basis, like creating content for other people. And then, 3, 4 years ago, I was kind of like, what if I combined all this like 20 years of knowledge, the journalism, the copywriting, the blogging, all of it, um, and, the social media management piece and all this like storytelling stuff. What if I combined those things and I could teach other people what I know and how to create content? So that's what I get to do now. I still take on my own copywriting clients. I'm never going to not take on my own copywriting clients. I'm like a full word nerd. Like forever. I'm going to like I'll always do that. But on the content side, now I get to teach other small business owners how to create content that is creative. I think the thing that is missing, that people are always missing, is like content can be fun. It doesn't have to be a chore that you just like check off your list and you're like, oh my God, I got the content out. Okay. Right? Like I don't think it has to be that way. And I think
Yeah.
people forget.
Yeah, and I love that that's your approach is like have fun with it, enjoy sharing, don't don't be an overshare, TMI, but still like be you. And in
Hmm.
that comes the creativity and the energy. Show your passion. Like I love that is the way you approach it, right?
Well, and people use the word refreshing a lot when they refer to the way I teach it because I think, we're so used to I think, following this kind of formula. Like so and so said like a lot of my clients come to me and they're like, oh, well, so and so told me I should do it. And I'm like, that anytime I hear the word should, I'm like, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
So, listen, I'm this, it happens to me too that I'm influenced by some other person. I'm like, oh my God, that person's doing it that way. Do I need to do it that way? And then I kind of forget. And I'm like, wait a minute, Lindsay, follow your own advice. You don't have to
I
do it the way
know.
everybody else is doing it.
Oh my gosh, it's so easy to get sucked into the vortex.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
get it. I do the same thing. And actually, what I have done is recognized, especially on Instagram, because I think that's the space I get really sucked into. As soon as I start to feel the suck, I turn the
Mm-hmm.
app. I
Yes. Yep.
As soon as you start to feel that I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, they're making more money, they're doing better. That's when I'm like, whoa, time out, Instagram closed, do something different.
Mhm.
That's ridiculous. Stop it.
Yeah.
Man, it's easy to go down that shame spiral.
Oh, it totally is. And like if you think about it, it's like a tiny little square in your phone. Like, why does it have so much power over us? You know what I mean? It's
Oh,
like, isn't it like when you think about it that way, it's so wild. And I think all of us get sucked into that like shame spiral. And there was a time where, you know, being triggered by other people's content was like, but why is it triggering us? And what is it revealing about our inner self? And da, 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 da. Now I'm like, if it triggers you, unfollow that person
yes.
or mute them or whatever. Like life is too short
Life is
to
too
fill
short.
your content feeds with stuff that makes you feel shitty.
I if I see if there are first of all, if there are more pictures of you on your Instagram feed than anything else, and if you are scantily clothed in any of those, that is an immediate
Mhm.
unfollow. If you
Mhm.
are leaning against any kind of a sports car, specifically a Lamborghini, that is an unfollow from me. If
Yes.
you are holding large amounts of fake money in your hands and talking about how successful you are, that is an immediate unfollow. That bro marketing bullshit
Hmm.
absolutely makes me want to vomit. Can I just,
Yes.
my show, so I can say that out loud. Um,
Yes.
that kind of crap makes me want to scream.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah. You're not alone in that.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Like I took a screenshot of an ad to send to a friend. And like now I keep getting this ad. And it's like this woman, and it's like there's like three of her heads, and there's like, lasers in back, and
Oh God.
and there's like doves flying over her head or something.
Oh
And it's like
no.
earn $1 million mastermind. And I'm like, are people still
Yes.
doing this? Like, I like to think that we're moving past the bro marketing phase,
Yeah.
but I think it's still alive and well.
Well, and the bro and the bra, because I think there's a bunch of
Mm.
women out there that use a bunch of really underhanded psychological tactics to convince you that you're not enough and that they have all the answers. And if you just buy their $47 program or join their $15,000 mastermind, they're going to wave their magic fairy godmother wand because they're the guidess and they're going to somehow transform your life.
Mm.
And look, isn't that what we all want? Sure it is.
Yes,
But
yes. Which is
yeah, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. It's that
Mhm.
simple.
Yeah. And I think, the not enoughness, right? Like I think I agree. It plays with like your psyche, and you're like, anytime I see anything like the secrets to I do
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And I've used those terms too. I've used those terms in the titles of master classes and whatever. But anytime it's like, unlock your right? Sometimes you just kind of have to check yourself and be like, wait a minute, why
Yeah.
am I clicking on this? Right? And I think, you know, I don't think anybody out there, you and I especially, right? We have real world experience. We worked out, we
Yeah.
spent 20 years getting really good at our craft,
Yeah.
and we brought it online. There's a difference between you and I, and the women that you and I surround ourselves with, and the
Yes.
people who are just like, oh, I got fired from my job. I think I'll make an online business now.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot, there's difference there. So you have to sort of like, and I think it's also, just getting curious, being like, why am I being sucked into this? Like,
Yeah.
why, and, like, what is happening in my brain that I feel like this person has some secret that I don't? And I know we all get into this comparison
Yeah.
thing,
We do.
right? Like when I first started, um, I only did like done for you stuff. And then when I sort of switched to this like done with you more content stuff, like I remember there was this woman, and I forget her name, but she had like in all of her like brand photos, she had this like sparkly sequin jacket. And
Yeah.
I was like, I can't do it. I don't have a sparkly sequin jacket. I'm not going to be good at it. Like, what is that nonsense? Like, it's so stupid.
For real.
Mm,
Yes. Yeah. You are never going to be any good because you don't own a sparkly sequin jacket. Okay.
mhm.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
it. Your
Yeah.
career's
Isn't
over.
that stupid? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, this is the important part, right? Like you said it. We have to pause and ask ourselves the reflective question. Why is this sucking me in? What is it making me feel right now?
Hmm.
Why do I feel compelled to hit that button? What is happening to me?
Yeah. Yes.
Whoa.
Hmm.
Whoa. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think there is, back to like the bro and the bra marketing and stuff. Like you know, I know you and I have gone viral on threads for like the most ridiculous things that have nothing to do with business. Like I know we've talked about this. Um, and I think there are people who have used that tactic for so long that I think those people just don't know how to do it any other way. And
Yeah.
even if, in a perfect world, we've moved on for that type of marketing and that type of content, I think those people will continue to defend how they do it because that's the only way they know how. And
Yeah.
that's the way they've gotten clients this whole time.
You know what? I think you're right. And I don't know that I'd ever actually thought about it that way, but they might be that one trick pony. And
Mm,
what happens when you find something that works? Well, you double down on it. And then when it stops
mhm,
working as well, what do you double down again? Um,
mhm.
and I think we're seeing that. I'm certainly seeing that. There's lots of conversation with that in the online space where you and I operate, is that, people are really getting smart. There were a lot of people got caught and really spent I'm always astonished at the exorbitant amount of money some people spent, especially through COVID and the last 3 or 4 years, recognizing that some of these gurus and experts were not as expert as they claimed, that in
Yep.
fact you're not likely to make $1 million in 6 weeks, that is the exception, not the rule,
Mhm.
and that they very often overpromise and underdeliver.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's the place that we're in right now. I think it's like, I think so many people have been burned and
Yes.
overcharged
Yes.
for like nonsense. And so I think consumers and customers and clients are becoming more savvy about where they invest their money.
Yeah.
Um, I've definitely noticed it. Like I feel like things have shifted wildly over the past 6 months,
Yeah.
like even 6 months.
Yeah.
Um, like where people are choosing to spend their money. And it's so, you know, and it's noisy. It's noisy out there. Like there's a lot of there's just more, I think there's more online businesses probably than ever before.
Sure. Sure. Because I think a lot of people do feel like it's a space that's easier to enter. I would never
Yeah.
go set up a bricks and mortar store, right? That doesn't make sense for me. That,
Hmm.
as much as I will spend time with clients on site, a great deal
Hmm.
of what I do is done virtually. And so doesn't it make sense that if I'm going to deliver my services online, that I participate in that online marketplace, if you will?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think and it's easier than ever. There's more spaces to play.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I agree. And I think, I talk a lot about sort of like breaking through the noise and stuff. And um I think it's a like a requirement of us, one, to be like so super clear on our messaging,
Yeah.
and two, like you kind of have to stand for something. And not that you have to be like political or,
Right.
you know, polarizing, but you do have to stand for something.
Yeah.
And continue to like so much of marketing and content is just repetition, just from
Yeah.
like different angles. Like, and people forget that. Like, you don't have to reinvent something every single time you want to create content. Like, you want to write an email or put something out on social media. Like, it doesn't have to be reinvented. And so
No.
that's why I talk a lot about this idea of creativity. Like even when I was at the CBC, my producers would be like, Lindsay, you're not going to find any story ideas by like sitting behind your computer. You have to go out into the world and find story ideas. The same
Yeah.
is true for content, right? Like that all my best ideas come from when I'm on a WALK with the DOG, right? Like, and so I often joke, I'm like, well, I'll just get a rescue dog and go walk them for 8,000 steps a day. You're going to have a ton of content ideas. Um, but I think, the strategy part of content is never going to go away. It's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of like the book smarts, right?
Right.
But the creativity thing, I think sometimes we forget about that part, and that we
Yeah.
forget that we need like the white space. We need like brain space to be able to let those creative juices flow.
I think you made a couple real important points there. And the first thing is that, the strategy is one thing. And maybe we'll talk about what that should sort of look like in a minute, but we can all be creative. And I hear from a lot of people, well, I'm not very creative. Yes, you are. You just don't think you are. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you need someone to help pull that out of you. You need some practice. Maybe you need someone like
Mm-hmm.
my friend Linz who can actually get your juices flowing. But we all have the ability to be creative, especially when we are talking about the product or the service that we're really good at and really passionate about. And that's what we got into the business in the first place. Like there's
Yep.
lots of juicy stuff there. And that's a great place to start. And then you build that creative muscle is maybe the way I would
Hmm.
put
Oh, it is a muscle. I agree.
it.
And I think it's like, and I believe anybody who's ever started a business, even if it's a brick and mortar business, right? Like over the years,
Yeah.
I've worked at this independent toy store in where I
Right.
live.
Yeah.
Um, you know, like she has to do the merchandising in the windows. Like that's creative. And I think anybody who started a business, um, uh, like you essentially took an idea
Yeah.
and made something from nothing. So
Yes.
even if you don't think you're creative, you are because you created something where there was nothing before. So
Yeah.
that's pretty
Yeah.
creative.
I heard somebody else say that just yesterday. I think it maybe was on Threads and it was someone posting. Like every time I think I can't do it, I remember that I literally I spun it out of thin air.
Yes. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. We're
Yeah.
all cotton candy. I don't know why I got that image of cotton
Actually, that's
candy.
great. We're all just cotton candy. And sweet and sticky.
Mm.
But no, I really, I really appreciate that. Okay, so maybe tell us a little bit. I mean, we hear this word strategy, I think, especially
Mhm.
when it comes to our content, our copy, our advertising, our marketing. We feel a little intimidated by that word. What does that mean? How do we keep that part simple, Linz?
So I probably talk about it a little bit differently than most people.
Good. I think that's
I think
good.
yeah. So I think it can be very simple. So the way I talk about it is you always need at least one type of long form content and at least one type of short form content. So
Okay.
more often than not, when I work with people, usually they choose email as their long form and some social media platform for their short form.
Okay.
And so I think we've been led to believe that short form is what converts, right? Like you throw up a post on Instagram or LinkedIn and you just sit back, oh, and all the clients come in, right? And
Yeah,
you're
that
just
is
like, well,
exactly the opposite of how it
I'm
works.
done here. I put it out into the world. And I think it's more than that. I think long form content converts better than short form.
Mm.
I think, you know, this podcast, for example, this is long form content. If you do YouTube videos, that's long form content. If you have a blog, that's long form content. Um, so I encourage people to start there first, especially my wordy people, because they're very good at it.
Right.
And then from that long form, you probably have like 97 short form content ideas
Yes.
already in there.
Yes.
So that's usually the way I work with people. And something I'm like super good at is content ideas. Like you and I know when we
Yeah.
were together, I kept pointing at people being, that's content. That's content. So you have to kind of imagine. Like I feel
Yeah,
like I just need to follow.
just to say, we spent 2 full days together at a retreat just a couple weeks
Mhm,
ago. And that's
mhm.
basically all she did was just run up behind people and be like, that's content. You got to take a picture. That's content. That
Yes.
needs to go on your social.
And
It was totally the
yeah,
joke of
I know. Yeah. So I know. And you're right. Like when people get fired up about what they're talking about,
yeah.
like what they're good at, like that's the stuff that does well. It's not like, and when I think when people think of strategy, they're like, oh, I have to fit it into this mathematical box. You know,
Yeah.
and the formula we're taught is like, well, you have to have a viral hook, and then you have to have some sort of body copy, and then you have to have a call to action. That's like, it is so much pressure. And
Yeah.
so I talk a lot about the anti-formula because I'm like, if that's not working for you, like if you're too stuck in a box with this little like formula stuff, then let's undo that and show up however the hell you want to.
And I'm one of those people that gets stuck because, right now on Instagram, it's very present. You have the B-roll, right? In
Hmm.
behind, you have some kind of hook and message in it. And then it's check out the post below to get more
Hmm.
info. And then the call to action is in there.
Hmm.
And I love that. I think it's really nifty, but I can never seem to come up with the right thing. And so I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not doing that because I can't quite seem to figure that out. So I guess I'll just record myself talking about something and just put
Yeah.
that on the internet, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't seem to get that formula to work in my head. So I really appreciate you saying that.
And what I will say is that you are a good talker. So anybody who's a good talker, right? Like when I was in journalism, I used to have to do pre-interviews for to
Mm.
like if I was doing any
Yeah,
kind of like live radio stuff
yeah.
to make sure they were good talkers. So I can tell right away you're a good talker. So that to me, I feel like that would work for you because you're such a good talker and you're so cute.
Well, thanks. Who knew in
Um,
all those report
yeah,
cards I got in grade school that Lindsay talks a lot was actually going to become an asset?
yes,
You wouldn't think
yes,
it when I was in grade six,
yes, yeah,
because that was
right?
literally on every report card I've ever been given.
Mhm. Yes, and I think that's why, you were a guest on my podcast, and like to me, you that's more talking. It's audio. So to me, I'm like, well, okay, that's where she shines.
Yeah.
Like if I was helping you with your content, I'd be like, do more of that.
Yes.
And I've seen you present, like you have so many little nuggets that, when you did the presentation at our retreat, like to me, I was just like, oh, 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 like my little content
Yeah. Your
buzzer
little
went
content
off.
brain was pinging all over.
Oh,
Okay, so
yes,
we'll,
yes.
we'll have to take that one offline. See this, and this
Yep.
is the thing is that I don't think I am special or different. Yeah, perhaps my skill sets live in different places. Maybe someone's more of a typer and a word. It's not that I don't love words. I love Grammarly. I
Hmm.
get great reports every month. I use all sorts of big fancy language. Grammarly loves me.
Oh,
But
wonderful.
yes, I have the ability to talk and project, and presenting and facilitating is my skill set. That's my special super.
Hmm.
But other people are really great at the writing stuff. Like I agree.
Yes.
And some people are really, yeah, some people are great at that formulaic piece. They can get that in their head real quick and they can spin out a ton of reels like that. It totally makes
Hmm.
sense to them. And so I just love this idea of do what actually feels right and makes you happy.
Yes. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, you know, especially the social media stuff. Like it's just
Yeah,
social media.
yeah,
It's
it's
not
not,
like the be all and end all.
it's
And I
not.
think, to your point, I express myself so much better in writing than I do speaking. So that's why it took me so long to start a podcast because I just was like, "Ugh." Like I'm so good at all this other stuff.
Right.
Like for me to speak, I was just like, "Bleh." Even though I was a radio reporter and I had to hear my voice every day. To me, I just was like, I don't want to be bad at something.
I know. Well, okay, so let's talk about that because such a big part of this is the head trash that we all
Hmm.
have. That mean, jerky, nasty inside voice who is like, who do you think you are? What do you think you're not good at that. Nobody wants to listen to you talk. You're totally going to screw it up. You even said to me before we hit record, I'm totally going to go off on a tangent. Like we say all of that horrendous shit to ourselves in our head. That saboteur conversation totally gets in the way of us sharing our brilliance.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And I feel like so much of business, all of the like hurdles is like in our brains. And I know I said this at the retreat too. I was just like, oh my God, our brains are so capable of so much creativity and so much cool stuff. And like, look at all of us, the 6 or 7 of us in that room. Look at what we've created. Isn't it weird that our brains are also the ones that are a jackass to us? Um, right? And I think so there's two parts to that. So one, again, learning to trust those like creative nudges, like those
Yeah,
downloads that you get when you're
yeah,
walking the dog, when you're in the shower, when you're
yeah.
on a drive, when you're like, you have a minute to breathe,
Yeah.
right? Or like as soon as you're falling asleep, you're like, oh my God, so many good ideas.
Oh
I'm
my
gonna
God.
remember those. And
100%.
and you don't. No, you don't remember those, especially if you're of a certain age. You don't remember that. So that's one part. The second part is like the trust that it's worth publishing.
Yeah.
So, the whole reason I started this business was I was like, okay, all of these women who've all started these businesses, all of us have a voice, and
Yes.
that voice deserves to be heard. So
Yeah.
there's like a deserving thing there too, which is like a funny word. And I think like it does come back to this like not enoughness. But
Yeah.
um you have ideas. You have ideas. I have ideas. Everybody who's listening has ideas. And it's just sometimes you just need like a third party person, like a bird's eye view to be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Like me following you guys around all week and being like, that's content, that's content. Right. So like
Yeah.
I know our friend Jan, she talks about being like the goose to your maverick.
Yeah.
So like same,
Yeah.
but content. So I think there's two parts there. There's some trust and there's some like first you have to find the white space or the the brain space to come up with those ideas.
Yeah.
And two, it's like the trust that it's a great idea and it's worth putting out there into the world.
Yeah.
So and like you said, it's a muscle. And I think, when we're learning any new habit, whatever it is, drinking more water, um,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just
Exercise.
looking around my desk. Yeah,
Yeah.
exercise, looking around my desk, like tidying your desk sometimes. Right? Like any new habit, you're gonna fall back to the other habit. So I think it's yeah, you do have to practice it, but the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, nailed it. No, but I think I love the points you made there. And I think, yeah, you have to practice. And some of that means that you actually have to be scared and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
don't listen to the jerk in your head, that trash talk. It's not true. That's one of the points I always like to reinforce is that conversation in your head that says nobody wants to listen to you. Nobody cares what you have to say. You're not smart enough. You don't have enough expert, like all of that. It's garbage.
Mm-hmm.
It's the saboteur lies.
Mm-hmm.
The funny part is it's intended to keep us safe.
I know, from like the tigers and the saber-tooth tigers or whatever.
Yeah. That's when that part of the brain developed when we were prey, right?
Mm-hmm.
The threat was real and physical. We were going to get eaten. The
Yeah.
threat now is existential. Oh my God, I might not get any likes on Instagram.
Oh, I know.
That's the
I
threat.
know. Writing an email is not, you're not going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Writing an email and pressing send is not going to end up with your immediate demise.
Yeah.
Right. The idea that, well, I might say something wrong or I might screw it up. I might say too much. Well,
And
the
what if you
prime
do? What
minister
if
of
you
our
do?
country says every second word. So you're good. He's doing
Yeah.
it. Um
Yes.
like come on. But it's this voice in our head, this saboteur conversation that keeps us small and sad and frustrated and overwhelmed
Yeah.
and ultimately results in us quitting our businesses or feeling like we're an abject failure or just plain and simple not sharing our brilliance with the world. And
Hmm.
that to me is tragic.
Yeah. And I think I agree. And I think, and I have a lot of clients like this that are just like, I'm too scared. And
Yeah.
one time I got to the bottom of it. She's just like, I have a cousin who I'm afraid is going to judge me. I was like, is your cousin running your business? Like,
Yeah.
who cares?
Who
And I
cares?
think, a lot of you know, I think our head junk stops us from most
Yes.
things.
Yes, it does.
Um, you know, and I used to be a yoga teacher and I used to talk, and a lot of what I talked about was like observing your thoughts at the beginning of class.
Yes.
And I think there's a country song, isn't there? Don't believe everything you think or something
Yes.
stupid. Do you know what I'm
Yes.
talking about?
Something
Yeah.
like that. I think that's
Okay.
perfect. Yeah.
I have a cold and I feel like I can't sing anyway, but it's like especially whiny.
No, I don't
But
know who's saying it, but that's idea.
yeah,
Don't believe everything you think because it's actually not
yes.
true.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
know you and I have talked about this a lot, right?
Yeah.
And if also, if you don't have somebody who you can like voice message, who can like talk you off the ledge, you need those people in your life. You need a Lindsay White who will be like, what are you like? What are you actually talking about?
Yeah.
Like you need somebody you can voice message. So I forgot where I was going at. Oh yeah, the jackass in your head.
Yeah.
So one, I know you and I have talked about this. Like name it. My
Yes.
jackass is named Susan.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, cool, thanks for coming, Susan.
Yeah.
But you're not serving us here.
Yeah.
So I think it comes back to that curiosity and just being like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah.
And finding yourself a community of people who are going to be like, because and I know you and I have talked about this. I'm on a lot of tangents. The bottle and the label, what is it?
Oh, yeah, that you can't read the label from inside the bottle, which basically means
Yes.
you don't see yourself accurately because you're in the bottle. You need people
Yes,
who are
exactly.
outside the bottle to say, yeah, actually, you're pretty awesome. And here's what you
Yes.
do really well. And here's why you're
Yes.
spectacular. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. And you need those people,
yeah,
especially as women, I think, right? Because I,
yeah.
you know, we have just so much more mental load and so much more
Yeah,
pressure, I think. Whether or not you have
you're
a
right.
family or not, we just have
It's a
different
lot.
roles. Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
So I think one, you absolutely need like people who are going to lift you up and be like, actually, here's what you're really good at.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Because other people can see things differently than we can see them.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, name the jackass in your head and be like, cool, thanks for coming, but you're not welcome here.
Yeah.
And again, I think it just comes back to like practicing. And here's the other thing too. Nobody is watching as closely as you think, which is like a
Yeah.
double-edged sword because one,
You're just
nobody's
not
watching as
that
closely as you think.
important, right?
No, because everybody's thinking about themselves, right? Like I used to, nobody cares as much as you think.
Totally.
Remember in the days of like vague Facebook messages or
Yeah.
like you would like share your lunch,
Yeah.
right? It was like
Who cares?
nobody cared. Or like I remember, you know, or you'd post like song lyrics on Facebook. Like so cringy. What's wrong? What's going on?
Oh, yeah,
Like,
for real. Um,
yes.
Let me give you a perfect example that happened to me very recently. Lindsay's smiling and laughing. So I have a very small but loyal following on Threads. And in fact, what I share on Threads is usually very different than what I share in other spaces like LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. And so I shared an observation about an interaction I was witnessing in the check in line to get on a flight home from Ottawa a couple weeks ago. And I saw something and it was interesting to me, made me kind of inside laugh. I shared it on Threads thinking that the 5 people that normally respond, including Miss Lindsay Smith, would respond. In fact, it blew up. It has had 750,000 views. And some people agreed. And then I also took some heat. And
People
it was
came for
very
you.
personal, right? Like all of
Yeah.
these random strangers on Threads who decided that afternoon and the next day and the next day after that comment on the 4 lines that I typed in, and particularly those with the names of Karen. To all you great Karens out there, my sincere apologies. But at any rate, it was how I never wanted to go viral. And you know what the interesting part is? 2 weeks later, nobody cares.
Nobody
Nobody
cares.
cares.
They're moving on to
They've
somebody
moved on.
else who pissed them off.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Somebody else that
Hmm.
triggered them. So that's the
Hmm.
perfect example of nobody really cares that much. And the truth is, nobody's really going to notice if you do screw it up or make a mess or any of those things. Nobody is actually likely to comment on you said too much. And if they do,
Then
and
get
they
a
are
life.
not in some way closely related to you, they are in the cheap seats.
Yes.
Nobody
Yes.
cares about the
No.
people in the cheap seats.
No.
If they're not in the arena with you, then don't worry about what they have to say.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, to that effect, going viral on Threads is very easy, and it always has zero to do with anything that your expertise is. It's
Seriously,
like
the most random thing, the
the
most
most
random
random.
thing. Yeah,
Hmm.
nothing to do with what I do, working with female entrepreneurs, absolutely zero, just a random comment that I made and it went kaboom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's the thing about threads too. And I think when it came out, right, it was like last summer or something. And I think what was so refreshing about it was just kind of like, it was like n'importe quoi. Like you could just, any random
Yeah.
stuff on there. And so I think, those of us who find threads, so to me, like, I'm very good at like witty one-liners. That's
Yeah.
kind of where my expertise is, right? So for me, it's super easy to throw stuff up on threads. Whereas the other platforms, like you said, you're a bit more polished in other platforms. So I'm kind of like, is there a way to bring that kind of threads energy to the rest of our content? Or does it only exist there? And
No,
I've had clients ask me, be like, do I need to be on threads? And I'm like, no, no,
no,
not everybody needs to be there.
no. Just like I'm not on TikTok. It's just not,
No,
it's not a
I
platform that I
tried. No.
participate in. You know
And I
what?
don't think your people are there.
I don't think my people are there. Actually, I don't think my people are really on Instagram either, except to do the doom scrolling at night. My people live
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. That's where people
Yes.
do like
Yeah.
real business. That's where people go to do real business. I'm
Yeah.
not an influencer, nor do I wish to be.
No.
I don't have a whole marketing team to create the
No.
most
It's
beautiful
just us.
reels, right?
Hmm.
It's just us. And so I think, what Linz and I are trying to say here is don't let that little jerk in your head convince you can't do it. Be scared. That's okay. It is
Yep.
okay to
That's
feel
okay.
nervous about it, and you just do it anyway. Post the
Hmm.
thing,
Yeah.
create the reel, and then hit send.
Yeah.
Write the blog and just put your thoughts down. And for God's sake, stop editing the daylights out of it.
Yeah.
Be you, show up authentically, send the message. It'll all be okay.
It's gonna be okay.
It's going to be
It's
okay.
just it's just content. It's
It's
not life or death. Like
no.
and I always tell the story about my husband when I was teaching yoga. One, I always wanted him to come to a class that I was teaching or to just come to a class with me. And he was always like, I can't go to yoga before I get good at yoga. Like I can't touch my toes. And I was like, nobody's gonna be looking at you because they're all gonna be thinking about their own downward dog.
Yeah.
Like nobody's gonna be looking at you and being like, oh my God, like I can't touch his toes. How dare he come to yoga? And like you go to a class to get good at the thing. You
Yeah.
don't go because you're right. Like, and so I always tell that story. Everybody else is on their mat worrying about their own downward dog. They're not looking at you and your whatever, like your inflexibility,
Yeah. Whatever
right?
you're
Like,
doing or not doing, they don't care.
yes, no, and and I think so much of marketing and content is just experimenting, right? Like, your
Uh,
messaging has to be clear, your niche has to be clear, um, but everything else, like, just have fun with it, like it doesn't have to be so freaking serious
no, it doesn't.
and see.
I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I love it. That's a great message to end the conversation on today. Linz, where does everybody go to find you?
So I am on the Instagram at Lindsay Smith Creative and my website, lindsaysmithcreative.ca. I work primarily with small business owners, helping them create nurture content. So I have something coming out very shortly that
Yeah.
is super accessible for other small business folks who have like DIY'd their website, DIY'd all of their content stuff. So I have something coming out shortly. I don't know when, but soon. I've been working on it for months. And this is one more soapbox.
Yeah.
So this idea of nurture content, I think, I always I keep saying like if you don't have nurture content, it would be like going on a first date and like proposing marriage. So you can't sell stuff if you're not nurturing your audience. And I think so much
Yeah.
of marketing is just like building relationships. So that's a lot of what I talk about, just building relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great way to do that through your content designed specifically to nurture those connections.
yes. And I
Yes.
think there's like this pressure of like, oh my God, all my content has to sell and all of it has to convert. No, it
No,
doesn't. No, it
no,
doesn't.
no. It is a bit of a longer game, right?
Yeah,
And so
for
I
sure.
really appreciate that that's what you do is help people embrace, what do I really want to say? How do I do that in a way that makes me feel good, that nurtures the relationship? Because I think when we're in it for the right reasons, then the
Mm-hmm.
right people will be like, oh, yes, I want to work with you.
Yes. And that's the thing, right? Like the hardcores will become your fans because of your content and be
Yeah.
like, the best compliment on any of your content is like, this is so me. How are you in my
Yeah.
head?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not the like 5 tips to
Yeah.
um, organize your laundry. Like nobody wants that anymore. Like if you think about your own scrolling habits or your own the way that you consume content or like the emails that you're opening,
Yeah.
which are the things that are standing out? I'm gonna guess it's not like the 7 secrets to blah blah blah.
Yeah. No, I think we're over it.
Yeah.
I think we're totally over it. Um, Linz, thank you. This has been
Oh,
such a
thank you.
fantastic conversation today, about how to create the content, what the strategy is, but also where we actually become our own worst enemy in the
Hmm.
process of
Hmm.
just showing up. So thank you. I'm super grateful for your time today.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I always love chatting with you.
Yeah, me too. I love our conversations. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. I feel so lucky that I get to connect with such amazing female entrepreneurs. And if you enjoyed today's session, would you do me a big favor? Would you hit subscribe and give this episode a 5-star review? I'd also love it if you would share with your friends. We've got a goal here at the Female Founder Unplugged podcast to impact 1,000 female founders. And with your help, we can really amplify the message. Thanks again for being a part of the show. And don't forget to connect with me at highvoltageleadership.ca. We'll see you next week.